So, anyway, this time, this age of grace for believers is literally training for reigning. How you live now will determine what you do in the age to come. And Rob Bell does point that out, and I appreciate that he does. He says on page 41, in fact, Jesus takes a man's question, the rich young ruler, about his life then and makes it about the kind of life he's living now. Jesus drags the future into the present, and I like that. So we need to understand that how we live now is extremely important as believers. On page 49, Rob mentions a passage from 1 Corinthians 3. Very important passage, especially for believers. So let's read it. 1 Corinthians 3, 12 through 15. Now, if anyone builds on this foundation with gold, silver, precious stone, wood, hay, and straw, and he's talking about the foundation of Jesus Christ, each one's work will become clear, for the day, which often speaks of the return of the Lord, will declare it, because it will be revealed by fire, and the fire will test each one's work and of what sort it is. If anyone's work which he has built on it endures, he will receive a reward. If anyone's work is burned, he will suffer loss, but he himself will be saved, yet so as through fire. Now, Universalists use that as a scripture to support their theory that, this applies to sinners, what we call sinners, that, you may build with hay, wood, and stubble in this lifetime, and that may all burn up when the Lord returns, but you will be saved, but it will be through fire. That is not the context of this passage. If you read, he is speaking to Christians, and he's saying, whatever you do for the Lord, you need to make sure that, number one, it's built on the foundation of Jesus Christ, and number two, make sure you're building something that will last. In other words, you don't want to build a ministry because of selfish ambition and jealousy and envy. You want to build a ministry because, number one, God told you to, number two, he gave you the blueprints, and number three, he empowered you to do so. And it's for his glory. And so there's different, it's really the motive of the heart that will come into question. But this is talking about believers. This is not talking about sinners being able to live however they want to live and not accept Jesus Christ during this age. And then somehow they're going to get zapped by heavenly flames and all the bad that they did will disappear. He then says, he then proceeds to say that in the age to come, racism, bigotry, jealousy, pride, etc. will not survive because the flames of heaven mentioned in the passage I just read are hot. When I was reading that, I just pictured like this filter, and that when someone dies, whether they know God or not, they pass through this filter, and anything that's bad is zapped by these flames. But here's the thing, and I talked about this in the first teaching. The fallen nature is because Adam and Eve obeyed Satan. Satan became their father. After Adam and Eve, all the way through history to present time, any child that's born is born with that fallen nature, and their father, their spiritual father, unfortunately, is Satan. The fallen nature is because of unbelief in God, and from that unbelief proceed murders and gossip and coveting and all of the sins that we call, sexual immorality, all that stuff. The only way for that fallen nature to be done away with, and the Bible is clear, is that you must be born from above and receive the new nature of Jesus Christ in you. That is what is the new creation, and if you actually look it up in the Greek, it's the new race. So God has made a whole new race, which is new. Romans 6 is clear. The old nature is put to death. We are to live out of the new nature, and the Father will be looking for those who look like His Son. Romans 8, 29 and 30 says that we are predestined to be conformed into the image of His Son. It's not that it's not a scripture that supports predestination or Calvinism. It's a scripture that says, for everyone who believes, God has already decided that they will look like His Son. The only way that happens is to take on His image, and the only way that happens is to be born from above, and the only way that happens is to believe in His Son and confess with your mouth. So there is no heavenly flame filter that people are going to go through no flame zapper, where all the bad that was in them is just going to be disintegrated. That's just not the case. If you're corrupt here, you will corrupt heaven, and God's not going to let you in. Page 50, he states, Jesus makes no promise that in the blink of an eye will suddenly become totally different. People have vastly different tastes, attitudes, and perspectives. Okay. So I thought he just said that they'll pass through this heavenly flame filter, but then he says, well, he makes no promise that in a blink of an eye will be completely different. Kind of sounds a little contradictory to me. So basically he says, one age to come is here, you'll no longer be the racist bigot, but Jesus makes no promise that you'll suddenly be a different person. Yeah, I don't really understand that part of his book or his statement. Again, we will not enter the kingdom of heaven unless we're born from above. That's in John 3, straight from Jesus' mouth. I think he would probably be the authority on that subject. As I say, we're a new creation, and we're now citizens of his kingdom. We're born again with his image. That's in Hebrews 12:22 through 24 and Colossians 1:13. And we are born again and changed in the blink of an eye. Fortunately, most Christians don't know that, and they continue to live out of the fallen nature. But the fact is, we don't have to live out of the fallen nature. In Romans chapter 6 is a really good chapter to study on that. So, basically, you have to be born again. When you're born again, your nature is now as Christ. You're now reconnected to God, and as you feed it with the Word and with prayer and with His presence, you grow into the full stature of Jesus. Those who are not born from above will not go through a heavenly flame zapper and completely be made different. It's very clear. Like I stated before, the devil is loose after being in prison for 1,000 years, and he finds people to side with him. I would say that proves that the heavenly flame zapper does not exist, and that people are not just all of a sudden changed into good people because of heaven. So, on page 50 he states, it's important then to keep in mind that heaven has the potential to be a kind of starting over, learning how to be human all over again. No, that is not the case. The only people that enter heaven are those that are born from above and no longer live out of their human nature, but out of the Jesus nature. So, you can see that there's kind of some confusion over what exactly heaven is, who's going to get there, in Rob Bell's mind. There's just things that don't make sense. So I just want to go through this list quickly and tell you, number one, heaven is not the age to come, and it is not the millennial reign of Christ, as he implies. Heaven is a very real place where God dwells right now. In Ephesians 2:6, it says the Son is seated there, and so are we with him. So our spirit man, the image of Christ, is actually seated with him in heavenly places, and we are co-laboring with him, using the authority the Father has given us to bring the kingdom of heaven and its agenda to earth. That is what we're supposed to be doing. We are to minister from that heavenly place to earth, not from earth to heaven. And I don't have time to go into that, but the main thing is the ministry you're doing should be coming from heaven, not you responding to things on earth. 2 Corinthians 5:1 through 9 talks about how we'll be given new bodies that never corrupt, they never get tired. I want to read verse 4. So 2 Corinthians 5:4. I suggest you study that chapter. But it says, "For we who are in this tent, or this body, groan, being burdened, not because we want to be unclothed, but further clothed, that mortality may be swallowed up by life." Again, life is Zoe. So the whole passage is how if we die, we'll be present with the Lord. So verse 6, we are always confident, knowing that while we are at home in the body, we're absent from the Lord. But to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. And the Lord is in a real place called heaven, where his Father has his throne. So again, heaven's real. It is not the next age. It is a place now. The future age that begins at his return is the age when the heavenly King who decided to clothe himself with man's flesh, die on the cross for us, and be resurrected, takes possession of his inheritance, the earth and its people. Like the first Adam, he, as the last Adam, will take complete dominion. On page 42, Rob Bell explains that the culture Jesus lived in, the word heaven was one of the ways that people got around saying the word God due to the reverence of that name. In fact, when Hebrew writers would write God, they would do like of course they don't spell it G-O-D, but just to kind of show you, they'd write G-D. They would not write the whole thing. In fact, Yahweh, when they wrote Yahweh, they would take out the vowels, and that was just reverence for the Lord and His name. And so he's saying that instead of saying God, they would say heaven. First of all, he doesn't have any sources to support. He doesn't reference any sources to support that heaven was a synonym for God. No history to prove that. I'm not saying it's not true, it's just he doesn't give us any resources. But again, the Bible, which is the final authority, written by God who lives in heaven, and I would say he knows about heaven more than anybody, says that there is a real heaven. In fact, again, Zodiates, a Greek authority, says it's the dwelling place of God and where Christ is, and where saints who die now in this age go to await the resurrection and the second coming of God that ushers in the next age. Revelation 21:3, his desire is to unite heaven and earth, and his dwelling to be with men. So that is his goal. He wants a complete joining of that. So to Rob Bell, heaven is God. In a future age where people are zapped with heaven's flames and all the bad things they did and believed are destroyed, so they live right even though they never accepted Christ or received a new nature by being born from above. So his thesis of heaven totally eliminates salvation. And if you eliminate the need for salvation, why on earth did God become flesh? Why did he go on the cross? Why did he do all that and then send us his Spirit if there's no need for salvation? Because there's no hell, and heaven is going to be is the next age to come.